All right. So I didn't think I was gonna be making any more videos on this story at all, but we have just more developments, and they continue to become enraging. Just absolutely, just I mean, what do you say? It's truly, truly tragic, because we are finding out that Iryna, she might have survived it. I actually saw. I'm sure a lot of people have already seen the video footage of her of after she was stabbed. I thought it was going to be a horrific scene where like just blood spurting everywhere, and I know that because I have seen actual footage of people getting stabbed in those carotid arteries, and it's just blood everywhere immediately. And probably the most horrific I've ever seen was a police officer. I think it was in New Mexico, a state police officer who was attacked by a homeless guy. And this wasn't a black guy, but this was a homeless guy, hopped up on drugs, and he stabbed the police officer in the neck. And you can see the body cam footage. I mean, you can see the blood spurting out of his neck, and you can hear it. And I'll never forget that sound. It was just horrible, horrible sound. The cop just collapses in seconds, and he's gone. So I thought it was going to be something like that, and I've seen other ones with a kid in Australia stabbed in the neck in a mall. Just immediately, just blood just started. His whole shirt was just consumed in blood in seconds because he had been hit right there, and he just collapses in 12 seconds. Blood all over the floor. It's horrible. Now, for me, what makes this one so horrible, truly horrible, it's not that that police officer and that young man are any less human, but there's something, and what I think is what really garners the attention of this story is that there's something about harming a poor young lady, that is still ingrained. There's still chivalry in our society, I believe. It may be sort of abstract at this point, not very real, in the sense that people would typically step in as we have found out. But there is the reaction to this one is unique because this is a young woman. Our society still values women. I still value women. I know a lot of people may think I don't because I have particular views about the roles of men and women in society, but that's neither here nor there. This was a young lady, a beautiful young woman who didn't need to die. Um, so what we're finding out now is, of course, that when she was actually stabbed, she was still fully conscious, and she's looking up at the guy, terrified of him. And she's like, she starts holding her mouth, and she's crying, and everybody around her is just kind of going, like what, huh? They're doing all this stuff, and it turns out I haven't seen the rest of the footage. I've only seen the few seconds right after the attack when the suspect walks off. The guy who killed her, when he walks off, um, and yeah. So I've only seen that part, but from what I'm hearing is that she was bleeding for about an hour, and nobody helped her. Nobody did anything. Nobody did anything. They're just like, I don't want any part of this. I'm just you know, and there is certainly outrage, and that outrage is absolutely justified. There's people calling for these people to be accomplices to murder. I don't think that that's actually. They're not accomplices. In order to be accomplice to murder, you have to actually assist in somebody committing murder. Okay, and you probably have to have murderous intentions yourself. These people are just complacent. They're just completely. And I wanted this is what I really want to talk about in much of this video, here. I want to talk about why they did that. Why I think, at least, they did that. What's going on in our country right now? I mean, what this story is telling us about the state of humans in the United States right now, of just regular people. The people on this tram, most of these people, okay, so people on this tram, these are people who most likely can't afford a car, or for whatever reason don't have a car at the time. Maybe they have a car, maybe it's in the shop or something like that. It's being worked on, it's being used by somebody, and it's the only car they have. Either way, the point is, The only reason you're really on a tram is because you are in a lower level of society, kind of. And I don't mean that in a mean way, in a cruel way, or looking down. You're kind of, at least by United States standards, poor. I mean, compared to the rest of the world, you're pretty rich, but compared to regular United States, you're basically poor. Now, contrary to what the popular media has you believe, and I'm going to talk about this in another video at some point. Most of the reason why people are poor is because of themselves. It's not their circumstances, it's just them. Me, I'm trying to do better for myself and be a better me. I'm not poor, but I'm not like even middle class either, but I can't make excuses for the way I am. Like my situation. It's on me to be better. It's on all of us to do better. Anyways, but these people, that's what they are, and most of these people have just kind of, and I don't mean this to be mean either. They're just kind of mediocre lives. They're just kind of, just regular people. Like all of us. We're regular people. I would even say I have, in compared to them as well, probably it's fairly mediocre. And again, what I mean by mediocre, it's not something like super extravagant, and adventurous or anything like that. That's kind of what I mean. I don't. Again, it's not meant to be mean. And when you're kind of living in this kind of mundane life, and in a today's 21st century context in America, we are truly blessed in many ways, even people on this tram, but we're also a little coddled in these bubbles. We're living in bubbles here in America. There was a time when every day was survival. And I'm talking about in like the 19th century, 18th century, late 18th century, and stuff like that, into the 19th, even into the 20th in many ways. But life was truly about survival. Every single day, you go out, you work the farm, you work the crops, so you have food, and things like that. It was truly about survival in many ways. Those people had the realities of life, and the struggles. Reality was just much more real for them. They were faced with the daily issues of the struggle, the suffering of life. But what came from that, though, was strength. I'm pretty sore right now because I did a workout yesterday. My arms are sore, my chest is sore, my legs are sore. It was kind of a full body. And the reason why that is because I suffered. I went through intense personal physical agony to do that, to strengthen myself, my physical body. And the only way my body gets strong is by that suffering, by that struggle. And that's how society gets strong, through that struggle. That's how we become stronger. That's how we learn survival instincts. That's how we learn things like that. We learn those things when we are not encased in bubbles that give us the illusion of safety. That is what all of these people are here on this tram. They are living encased in a bubble, an illusion of safety. That's what's going on. And that night, August 22nd, that bubble got popped. And when that bubble is popped, people don't know what to do. Because first of all, once again, it's an illusion. It's a powerful illusion. It's a very powerful illusion. It creates the facade of, I'm just here in my mediocre life, day in, day out. And you know what? It's not much, but you know what? Here's the thing. I'm comfortable. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people just can never get out of these situations, because they're too attached to the comfort of what they have, and they don't really know how to really break away from it and so they kind of just live with it. I understand. Like I get that mindset. You know, I'm thinking about my aunt right now. One of my aunts, anyway. Um, we used to hang out with my cousin at her apartment all the time, and you know, she just watched TV all day. She didn't care what we were doing. She just would sit, watch TV. That's all she would do. Um, she was just kind of in her own little bubble, you know, just watching television programs. This was back during cable days, you know, things like that. It was just an incredibly desensitized lifestyle to the realities of reality, like the brutal concrete reality of things. If this man was to do this in the Wild West of the 19th century, I mean, he'd been absolutely torn to pieces. He would have just been shot multiple times on the spots. That girl would have gotten the help, immediate help that she needed. You would have had people just rushing in to plug up the wound and get her to a hospital as quickly as possible. Whether they could have saved her at that in those days, I don't know. But there would have been a rush to action because those people faced that kind of stuff on a daily basis. They understood what it meant, what happened. They knew that fight or flight instinct. They weren't living in a bubble of safety. Um, these people right here, they are. They're living in that bubble of safety. Look how like nobody's interacting with each other. They're just sitting on their phones. They're just kind of whatever. And look, I'm guilty of this in many ways too. I try not to do that. You know, I try to keep an awareness of my surroundings whenever I'm out and about. I don't sit and like look at my phone like all the time, but you know, sometimes I'll just be kind of, you know, I'll be eating whatever, and I'll just kind of. If I'm with friends or whatever, I usually just put my phone away and I'm just talking to the people with me. But if I'm by myself, you know, I tend to do that sometimes. But if I'm walking, I won't do that. That's just, it's really, really dumb to walk with your phone in your hand and just be sitting on it constantly. Anyways, but that's what's going on here. That's what most people in society are today. They are living, you know, I was watching Steven Crowder's stuff on this, and a couple other guys, and, you know, everybody's outraged by the fact that these people just didn't do anything. And it's angering, it's enraging because once again, now we're learning even more. We're learning the fact that actually Iryna, she could have been saved if someone would have rushed over and just put pressure on the wound and got her to the hospital. Might have actually, there was a chance that she could have been saved. I told you, I thought it was one of those horrific wounds where it was like just straight up just sliced the artery and just bled out and just blood all over the place. And seconds she's unconscious, and then minutes later she's dead because of blood loss. I thought that's what it was, but it actually wasn't. She was fully conscious, and she was bleeding for like over an hour, and nobody helped her. Nobody did anything. What could have happened within that hour? And so again, what we have here are a bunch of people. And these people probably, and this is, you know, this is something I was thinking about today when I heard about this. When it comes to stories, because I love stories, I think stories are important. But now I'm beginning to wonder. I'm really beginning to wonder. I bet you a lot of these people, they've watched all the MCU movies about heroism and fighting evil and whatever, and just sucked it all up, you know, just went to the movies with their buddies and watched these movies. Because you have people constantly talking about how come we have all these great movies about fighting injustice and evil, like the Lord of the Rings and whatever, but yet we live in a society of people who are just completely passive. The reason why, let me tell you, I know exactly why. Yeah, this is exactly why. Because these are people, like I've just told you, who are excuse me, they are closed off. They are living in their bubble of illusory safety, and their life is almost totally meaningless. Like I said, it's a mundane, mediocre life. It really just kind of goes in the cycle, just day in, day out, just doing our thing, and that's what it is. And people like that have no purpose, but the image of God within them needs purpose. And since they can't really find purpose in their actual lives, they, in their illusory bubble, fantasize about having purpose in a great romantic fight against evil. Stories like movies, TV shows give them that. It's a drug. It's a drug that gives them the sense, the feeling of the romantic feeling of good versus evil and good overcoming evil, because it takes them away from the reality. I mean, you hear this all the time from people on YouTube. A lot of these guys who love movies and hate the wokeness, and they keep saying things like, "Oh, we watch movies because we want to escape reality," And I listen to that and I just go, see, that disturbs me a little bit. I understand the sentiment. There are times where I like to watch movies or I like to watch TV shows because I just want to stop thinking about things that just stress me out or whatever. Um, but if that's the only reason you're going to watch a good movie, I find that troublesome. Because there are certain things that we also do. There are other things we do to escape the reality of life. Those are called drugs. Uh, Weed and things like that to get high. You do that because you want to feel good. You want to relax. You want to relieve the stress. You want to escape the reality of what you're facing in life, whatever it may be. And we all know that doesn't help. That doesn't solve the problem. That's like drinking alcohol. Doesn't solve the problem. Um, you know, so that's what's happening. That's what it is. They will watch these great movies about romanticism. This romantic battle of good versus evil, and that gives them enough personal satisfaction that they're good people because we're rooting for the good guys to win. The thing though is, here's the rub. What are you gonna do when it's time for you to be that good guy? You see, the thing with a lot of these movies, and this is what I'm gonna have to start thinking about with my own writing, is they over romanticize the struggle of the good guys, in their fight against evil. I'm trying to think of a way in which I can just completely dispel all that. I would want people to read my stories and not get the sense that this is just some romantic good versus evil story, but that being the hero, quote unquote, in the story sucks. It sucks. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's like when I go downtown to do evangelism. One of the reasons the Christians, I don't mean to step on toes. I'm probably going to step on some toes, but I know a lot of Christians who just go to church and they get the good feels of the sermon, whatever, and the music and the little Christianese talk we do while we're in church, blah, 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 blah. All that good jazz, whatever. They talk all about the spirituality that they have, and yet when I go downtown, there's like two, three of us out there. Why is that? Now, I'm sure there's a lot of real legit reasons. People are busy, whatever. I get all that. One of our guys who used to come down with us, he's not been able to join us because he just had a baby and he's busy. So I totally get that. But here's why. Here's what I think it really is because when it comes down to the rubber meeting the road, when you got to do the actual stuff of sharing Christ with strangers and people, that's the reality. That's when you realize, that's the rubber meeting the road. That's the concrete reality of the Christian life that the apostles faced. Why do you think they were persecuted? Yeah. So that's what's going on here. We're living in a society of people who like romantic ideas of good versus evil, but when it's happening right in front of their very eyes, they're like, this isn't what I thought it was. It's not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to sit back and watch the battles while I live in my comfortable life, I'm not supposed to actually be involved in the actual situations themselves. And so they just kind of sit there and they freeze. They just kind of like, it's almost like this mindset, this isn't supposed to be happening. This is not supposed to be happening. And so what they do is they kind of block it out. They just kind of go, this isn't happening, this isn't happening, this is not happening, just kind of. And I'm guilty of this too in many, many ways. I've done this in many, many ways. I've just kind of like tried to ignore a situation and just kind of hope it'll just go away. But I always know in the back of my mind, Chase, you knew what was happening. You knew what was going on. I mean, I'm not talking about like watching a murder happen, nothing like that, but there were just other situations, like little things that, just kind of like, I just basically ignored and just hoped that, I didn't see it, but I did. I did see it. I just pretended like I didn't because I just didn't want to be in the pressure of the situation of how to handle that. And that's just most people. That's the kind of people that are sitting on that tram when Iryna's bleeding and nobody helps her. They don't know what to do because they're just living in this bubble. None of those people probably know how to handle a severe cut wound. They don't know how to handle those things because they're just coddled in a society in which they are just taken care of, versus a time and a place when, if you were just out somewhere and you just got a nasty cut, you better learn how to get that fixed because no one else is going to help you. And you learn your lesson the hard way. You realize, I got to be careful next time so that doesn't happen to me. But also I have now the knowledge of when I see something like that, I can do something about it. That's not these people. Most of America, unfortunately, is just, we're not fighters. That's why we continue to allow corruption to flourish, because we're not really fighters. We're not really warriors. We're comfort seekers. We're just looking for our next fix, our next fun TV show, and that's going to make us feel good about ourselves, or the next thing that's going to make us, that we're going to, some cool cause we're going to see on Facebook or whatever, and we're going to say, I pledge to this, blah, blah, blah. And it's all not really pledging anything to it. It's just to make us feel good about ourselves while we ignore atrocities happening all around us. Abortion, for instance, just ignoring all of those things. That's what's going on here. So, anyways, I wanted to make a little video on that as news continues to come out about this. I want to do something else as well on sort of the state of the black community in America. I'm not going to do that here. I think what I'll do, though, is just really quickly, I will something. I want to just this little comment here from Mark Dice that I posted. I've been talking a lot about this issue because it's been so enraging, and it is actually very encouraging. There is a part of me that's really encouraged because, like I said, when I made that video the other day, I know it didn't get a lot of attention, whatever. I was just like, I just need to play my part in getting the story out, and this story is exploding, and I'm so glad that it is. It needs to be just everywhere. It needs to be everywhere. We need to stop with this whole, well, let me just read Mark Dice's comment here. You'll get the idea. Mark Dice said, quote, I got that white girl, end quote, he muttered after stabbing Iryna Zarutska in the neck 3 times on the train. This is why they didn't want the full footage release. An evil thug brainwashed by endless propaganda from the mainstream media and charlatan black leaders they prop up into hating white people and believing we're all complicit in a conspiracy to keep the black man down. It's long overdue to stop coddling the black community and going along with their exploitation and guilt trips about what their ancestors experienced. It's time to address the black crime problem in America. We all know the statistics, but you're not supposed to talk about them because of the accusation of racism. But that trick doesn't work anymore. Say it with me. Black crime matters. Follow my page if you're new here, because around here we're not afraid to say the obvious truth out loud. All right, so I'm going to leave that there. And on my next video, what I want to talk about is a little bit about what this is here. So Yeah, I'm gonna end this one here and post this one up, and then move on to the next video, and we'll just continue on here.